We are back here. Great to be back on our first show of 2024. So we go in big with the guests, and there's no one bigger right now than Tom Bogert. And the reason I say that is because it's the first account I check every morning because we're in the throes of the MLS offseason. Tom is the MLS and USMNT insider for The Athletic. Also, you'll hear him on Extra Time, and that is growing. He's got his own YouTube channel too, Tom. And you look like you're well treading above water. And I know in reality that can't be the case. How do you do it?
It's a healthy dose of anxiety. That's what kind of keeps driving you to not miss stuff. It's no, it's good. It's good to have some good relationships around the league, and that keeps it going because it ends up that there's some like transactional relationships. I get that. That's going to be part of it. But there's a lot of people who I like consider genuine friends. So it's like an extension of just talking to your friends. So that helps.
That's awesome. And I've talked to a lot of folks about the league, and one of the things that I enjoy covering is people are inherently good folks. I mean, can't talk about
Yeah.
everyone, and I don't know how. I mean, I base it a little bit on my experiences at ESPN, where in other leagues it was the same, but sometimes because of maybe the size and scope of an NFL or NBA, a lot of roadblocks, and so forth. But generally, we would say MLS is pretty open to all of this.
Yeah. And again, like you said, it depends. There's assholes everywhere you go, right? Like so that this is no exception. But for the most part, there's a lot of like-minded, good-headed folks around here. So hopefully
All right.
long
Well,
may continue, but we'll see.
let's actually pivot here. Five biggest a-holes in MLS. Go. Don't answer that. Am I on the list? No, of course not. No chance.
Never,
No
never,
chance.
Max.
I know someone probably I'm on someone's list, but we're here in the throes. And look, I wanted to get you on. I don't want to talk about so much specific transfer destinations or rumors or what have you, but just the marketplace in general. I know we started, and it wasn't like there were going to be big adjustments from Don Garber as he ended the last year and mentioned that there's not going to be much movement on DPs or the salary cap, which we kind of knew, and we wait maybe for CBA, and I think we all hope that there will be movement. But as you prepared for this marketplace, which is the main one for MLS, because the offseason, we
Yeah.
know the summer's coming, and things could set up there. But what were your expectations for what you were going to see here in January and February as clubs retool for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with like the roster rule stuff. Like, yeah, I wasn't expecting much, and I was disappointed that there was a couple like small things that were discussed, like decoupling the U22 initiative and DPs in the sense that every team can have three U22s and three DPs, no matter how like currently you need one of your DPs to be a young DP or under max TAM or whatever. Like, simplify it. Everybody gets 3 and 3. You don't have any hoops to jump through. I thought that was an obvious one that they were going to pass, and they didn't. There was another one where they kind of kicked it around of like, okay, this isn't a new DP spot, but instead of max TAM being at 1.7, you can pay one person a super max TAM. Like the NBA has like super max, and like you can pay them like 2 million or whatever, right? Like, that didn't happen. So those are a couple small tweaks I was hoping for that didn't. I will say from talking to people that are in those board of governors meetings, having these conversations and arguments and having these votes, 2025 is what I keep on being told. We're thinking of big changes. Like that's where all of our focus is going. And again, a couple of people I'm talking to were like, look, and that's not to give us a pass. Like he's like, I was arguing for, some small rule changes right now, but he's like, just rest assured, we are talking about new things for the future. We're not just kind of sitting on it and doing nothing. Again, we'll see if the more ambitious owners get their way or not, and what does or does not change going into 2025. But that's at least a little bit of a positive breadcrumb moving forward. Then in terms of the kind of micro, the day to day for MLS clubs, yeah, like it's cyclical in that like there are some teams that spend more money than others, and this offseason comes with Chicago Fire looking to add two DPs if they can, the LA Galaxy looking to add two DPs, Portland at least one if not two. So there's a lot of like big spending teams, and Seattle as well looking to add one. So I had my expectations like, all right, like these are kind of the big boys that are looking for DPs the same way again, like Miami was chasing Messi and everything else, right? Like, and when Atlanta signed Thiago Almada, it's like, oh, like what are they going to do with that spot? So this winter had a couple of like the bigger spending teams that had these big needs. So I was expecting some fireworks, and again, nothing's happened with Chicago yet, but we'll see where that goes. I think they're going to take some swings.
And Chicago has been big spenders. They just may have not spent it in the past
I
the right way. I
know.
want You mentioned, how and there's this one expression when I saw it on Twitter 1,000 times, take the training wheels off, which is absurd because,
It's a new buzzword. New
oh my
buzzword.
gosh. And, MLS has done that quite a long time ago, and it is where we're here. It's still a growing league. But there are teams, as you mentioned, with ambition or clubs with ambition that want to spend, and there's clubs that haven't. The really interesting one is Colorado is one of those that we earmark. They
Yeah.
don't have ambition, but this season is changing. Do you believe that those clubs are feeling that pressure? Maybe we've seen it a little bit more with other clubs last year or the year before, where I don't know if it's a keeping up with the Joneses or by necessity, you don't want to be left behind. Is that a phenomenon that maybe we're seeing more and more of?
Yeah, I believe that's true. And like again, that doesn't mean that you need to spend 16 million on transfers like Atlanta do all the time, right? Like you don't need to completely match them, but like if the Colorado Rapids aren't like if they couldn't come up with the money to buy Georgi Mihailovic, like you're absolutely gonna get left behind, right? Like that was a very fair deal. I think he's completely worth it. It's a good deal, like well done by the Rapids. They even have a 4.5 million purchase option in Rafael Navarro, their center forward. So like that's not something that the Rapids would have done 3-4 years ago.
No, I
With
thought
the
the
Sporting
Navarro
Kids,
thing, they would have said, okay, thanks for the loan, but
yeah,
they're bringing the baby back. That's great.
he's got another 6 months on the loan, so we'll see. We'll see if he
Okay,
stays or not. But
we'll
like
see.
at least that they're really trying. And like Kansas City was a good example. They before they signed Alan Pulido, I think their total, like every single transfer they've ever made in terms of real money, added up to like 2 million, or like 1.5 million in their entire history. And then you look around and there was a bunch of teams like splashing money, and then ownership was like, okay, here's 10 million, go get Alan Pulido, right? Like so that doesn't mean that they're gonna do that every single year. But teams, I think, realize, all right, like in this era of MLS, like we can't just try to find players in the draft. We can't just do that. Like we don't need to match the top spenders, but we can't be that far adrift at the bottom.
We look at the big targets, and that's what people want to see, and that's the ones that come with the big transfer fees, and they're out there, and whether they happen or not, I don't think takes away from the fact that takes away from the ambition of these clubs that are going out for some big South American ones, and we've heard the names like Pedro de la Vega, the Christian Medina move, I think, from Inter Miami, which is
Yeah,
the Danish number 10 who you've talked about, whose name escapes me.
Groenbeek.
Bro, that's it. That pipeline. How when you look at the big targets that European clubs would most likely be approaching to see if they could bring them in, but maybe they do a pit stop, or maybe MLS is a longer term destination. Is how fluid is that pipeline in MLS where you see these clubs going, we're going for the top tier?
Yeah, much bigger than it used to be. Like think of Evander going to Portland. He was leading the Europa League in assists for Midtjylland. Every time in history, that player has gone to a top 5 league in Europe. And, maybe it's a mid-table team. Like, instead, he's coming to MLS. He still has aspirations to go to Europe or maybe to one of the bigger Brazilian teams again in the future. But he knew that, like, hey, this doesn't end my career. This doesn't take me off the radar of any of these big teams, because teams are scouting this league. Teams have recognized that the quality has gotten better. Look, it still needs to continue to improve and everything. But that, like, all right, like if I have 10 goals and 10 assists here, scouts won't look at it and be like, well, in reality, that's like 2.5 goals and 2.5 assists in a real league, right? Like, so Cucho Hernandez came from Watford. They got relegated. That's a player who stays in the Premier League or goes to Italy or Spain. Went to Columbus. He's going to go back to Europe at some point. His play in Columbus got him into the Colombian national team. Again, that is not something that we could say in the past. Thiago Almada made a World Cup squad while being in MLS. Like, that's not nothing. Like Groenbeek, that's another great example. He's somebody, and European teams are trying to sign him, but the fact that Charlotte even has an opportunity to sign him, and like maybe it's not a huge percentage that it's going to happen because it's a very difficult deal to get done, and a lot of like good European teams that are at least considering it. So the fact that these players are considering these moves and knowing that, hey, like Groenbeek probably doesn't want to spend the next 15 years here. He probably wants to continue developing in his career, getting to the top of whatever he can reach. But he knows if I go to Charlotte, I'm going to get paid well. I'm going to play well. They're going to build a team around me. And then in 3 or 4 years, 1 or 2 years, whatever happens, I can still go back to Europe at a higher level. Like that's the most fascinating trend for me, and the most important trend, maybe outside of the academy system getting so much better in the last decade.
I read a couple of those guys that the clubs are holding off because obviously the European teams will come in during the summer and perhaps offer a bigger deal. So that handcuffs MLS, or I mean, I'll ask you that. Does it handcuff MLS so much? Because I imagine this time would be maybe the right time for some players, but I can understand why some clubs will wait to see if these European teams will have a better offer. But yeah, again, they have to be cautious because that better offer may not be there when
Exactly.
June or July. So what is the dynamic you think for MLS clubs doing their main business this time of the year?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting balance. There are some like there's a forward for Internacional in Brazil. His name's Mauricio. I know that there's three MLS teams who like Charlotte bid for him. Seattle had some talks, and the Galaxy were interested as well. And from the people I've spoke with, is that Internacional made it pretty clear we don't want to sell now because we think that there's going to be more European interest in the summer, and then whether we sell him to you or to Europe, it's going to be a bigger fee because there's more teams that are interested. So like there's that, but then like the other side of it is like the South American leagues are run on this kind of calendar. So it's
Yeah.
the offseason in Argentina and Brazil, right? Like so it's not completely hamstrung. For me, it's the more like defined one is the outgoings, right? Like Brandon Vasquez, he like Borussia Mönchengladbach really wanted to sign him in the summer. I don't blame Cincy whatsoever for saying like we want to win a trophy, right? But like it's unfortunate for Vasquez. He's getting his move to Rayados, and he's going to get paid very, very well at Monterrey. Like that's very good for him. But like Mönchengladbach wasn't on the table this winter just because like they couldn't wait around for 6 months without a starting center forward, and they had to spend their budget to bring in another player, right? Like so, I understand that, and that makes it difficult, case by case basis. The younger players, it's not as much of a problem for because teams in Europe will either be okay with like, all right, we'll do the deal now, and he can stay on loan at your club until the end of the MLS season, or all right, whatever, like we'll wait until the window. Like he's not going to be like a first choice starter at one of these bigger clubs, but like when you want to sign a player like Thiago Almada, and like the kind of feedback I was getting, like Atlanta are expecting him to be here till the summer because like how many teams are going to be looking to like spend 30 million on a player in January and bring him in and like throw him into the lineup, right? Like they think it's just more likely for that to happen in the summer, and then it'll be the same thing as last year. It's really difficult to let go of your best player in halfway through the season, particularly if you're playing well.
That's tough for Thiago Almada, who I'm sure is
Yeah,
eager to make that move. And then I
he
would
is.
imagine Atlanta could very well be in a top 3 or 4 position in the East.
Mm.
And they were like, what can you do? It's fascinating stuff, but it's also it could be infuriating or not infuriating. That's too strong a word, but frustrating in
That's
many
fair.
ways as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned Brandon Vasquez and Kate Cal now to Chivas, which these are two moves. I know the fans of USMNT who want to see their players play at the top European leagues want to see these guys go over there and test them. And I there's no doubt that playing in the
Yeah.
Bundesliga and even the Eredivisie is probably going to prepare them a little bit better. But I wouldn't poo-poo Liga MX and certainly not Monterrey or Chivas. I think these are really exciting moves for both these guys because Rayados dropped a lot. They can spend a lot generally. They're one of those
Mm-hmm.
super clubs in Mexico. And Chivas, a very rare move for an American player with Mexican
Yep.
heritage going over there. And I'm eager to see it. And I think it's going to be a high pressure situation for him because the Mexican media is going to be on him. When you see those moves, maybe we can editorialize a little bit, not so much about the transfer market. When you see those things cross the line there, what does Tom Bogert think when you see that that's the move for the next two guys that we valued very highly in Major League Soccer?
Yeah, I think it's exciting, I guess, for all parties, honestly. And look, I understand the argument for like, hey, if if you can go to Europe, whatever, like put yourself to the highest level, of course, like that's totally fair. The pushback here for both of these players, what was the other offer? I can tell you right now, like since he didn't accept an offer from a European team, the only offer that was on the table was Middlesbrough, and like that, maybe that would have been fine. Maybe going to the championship. I think that they're like mid-table in the championship right now, pushing like that could have been good. I can promise you, they're not going to pay salary anywhere near what Monterrey is paying Brandon Vasquez. So, like, we all like to think like we want to like. I don't know, man. It's tough to criticize somebody for
Take
getting
the
the money. And
money.
again, like
I would take
Monterrey's
the money. I can't be
yeah,
I take the money all
like
day.
that's the thing, right? And like, there's a lot of people like myself, like even if I was thinking the other way around, be like, dude, like when you're in that situation, you don't really know, man. And I like Monterrey's still a very high level. I get the fear of like maybe it's a lateral move in like Liga MX and MLS. Like I get it. Like if you're leaving MLS, you'd rather see him go to Europe rather than leave the league. So now we don't get to watch him every single week playing here. But again, like it's not like they turned down Mönchengladbach this winter, right? Like it's not like he did that. It's not like he chose Saudi over, a Europa League team or something. So that's the Brandon Vasquez situation, and so that's why like I like it for him. And like let's be honest, man, like he's probably the fourth or fifth choice of the national team pool already. Like there are more realistic. Like I don't know. I don't think that you should cost yourself 50% on salary, hoping that you can be the fourth striker. And like again, that maybe that makes me wired with like a loser mentality, right, or something. But like I get it, man. Like I can't fault him.
No,
In the
I
case
see.
of Cade, in the case of Cade Cowell, the only other offer right now is AEK Athens. Chivas is better than AEK Athens.
Yes,
The
but
top of Liga
you'll get
MX is
argument
better than
about
Greece.
that. You'll get argument from some of those
Yeah,
accounts.
just
But
because
I
it's a
agree
club
with
doesn't
you.
make it better. And like it's like Kate Cal, and I'll tell you that this is all like it's a false premise. AEK Athens was not offering $4 million. Like I thought that San Jose should have agreed to deal with Bologna last summer. Bologna were not offering $4 million either. Like this is a great deal for San Jose. It's good for Cade Cowell. He's going to get a pay raise. He's going to go to a new environment. He's going to test himself, continue to develop. He's 20, man, or 21, whatever he is. Like he's got a lot of career left. And whether hell, even if he just stays in Mexico for the next decade, cool, good for you, man. Like that's fine. But this doesn't mean that he can't continue to develop or go abroad. And again, like last point, as I'm rambling here, I agree. Like he should have been at Bologna right now. Like San Jose should have accepted the offer, but it worked out for them in the end, in that they're getting more money. And again, like Cade is content with his move. But like again, it's not like they had, hey, we have two offers on the table, they're the same. You pick, right? Like a lot of these are a false premise. Like, would you rather him say, you know what? No, I'm gonna wait for another European team to come. No, what if that never happens and he just stays in San Jose another few years? He clearly needed to refresh and again continue his development somewhere else. It was time for everybody. Again, these things come in cycles. I love it for him.
I love it for him, and this is at the top of my list when I think about it, because we've seen him struggle with his technical skills.
Yeah.
But in Liga MX, and MLS doesn't really have this problem. They lack, and I talked to a lot of folks in the league, they lack those top tier athletes that can separate and get vertical. That's him. So I have a feeling he has a really good shot to shine there. And what that would do for his career and what a great story would be, phenomenal. So it's certainly worth the squeeze when you talk about it. And you mentioned it, Tom, and there's a misconception because I think a lot of people automatically think you go to Europe, let's take the Premier League out of it, even and a couple of the top
right
around it. No one's dropping this kind of money. It's very, it's pretty run of the mill. It's not nothing to scoff at, but it's like $2, $3, $4 million deals aren't being handed out to players. Certainly not from the exterior.
And like Sevilla won the Europa League last year. They would have struggled to match Jesus Ferreira's current salary at FC Dallas. And FC Dallas we view as one of the cheap teams in the league, right? Like it's crazy to think about. Like there are some players that, like again, Miles Robinson. I know that he's getting, even with restrictions in free agency, he's getting more now than he would have at PSV. If like again, I don't know if an official offer's on the table or not versus interest. Like Aaron Long in free agency last year. Like yeah, there were teams that were interested, but like on like a lower deal. Like some players are more valuable here, and like that's okay.
Do you think that'll? Do you believe that we'll continue to see those players are in that position where they can get that next deal, will stay here? I think it's great for the league because we can recognize these American players. Certainly in the case of Mihailovic, you spend a little time in Europe and came back. That gives him some equity. And certainly the ones like Miles Robinson who have built here that we know. That's valuable to the league because it's a lot of comings and goings if you have some sort of stability. I sign me up for that, even though it's not Messi or Suarez or these big top tier players or Paulo Dybala, whose contract was mentioned on some social media handles. These are guys that are valuable to the league because they're North American and they're recognizable and they're reliable in this league.
And good quality players, right? Like you need both. You need to be exporting players and you need to be keeping quality. And like I think like somebody like Miles Robinson is a good example because he's in his prime. He's going to be or maybe not because the splitting the votes between him and Miazga. He's one of the best defenders in the league, and like he'd be up there for defender of the year. Or it'd also be cool if a U.S. national team player went abroad, right? Like either situation, I think is good with me. I mean, it's probably better for MLS in and of itself that he's here. Probably would have been better for the national team if he left, but like I still think this could be mutually beneficial. And oh, by the way, he signed a 1 year plus a 1 year option. Like he could go ahead and do this again in a year if he wants to, right? Like so again, like all these things don't end a career. They don't have to be forever decisions. Hell, look at Saudi Arabia. How many reports have we seen of dudes who are ready to come back after 5-6 months? Like things can always change. Like yeah, right. Like and a lot of the things I've gotten to is like there was a player who was in free agency a couple years ago who would have been like Manchester United were considering signing him as like a third choice goalkeeper. You're not even going to make the bench and you're not even going to start the League Cup games. but he was going to make more money. And it was like, he's like, I don't really want to sit on the bench, but it's like in the NBA. Get the contract extension, they can always trade you, right? Like, get the money, and then, hey, I'm actually unhappy being on the bench here. Can you loan me to MLS, and I still get to keep my salary? Like, that's a thing that's like the what's the opposite of idealistic? Like that's the cynical side of the business, right? Like it's a business at the end of the day, and people are trying to maximize their earnings. Nobody wants to that. This is gonna be too strong. Most people I talk to say players don't want to live in Saudi Arabia.
No,
But, like,
players' wives don't want to live in Saudi Arabia, which is a huge issue, I think, that they're realizing once they land there.
Yeah. And like, but if you're getting paid 4 times the money, like, then you'll consider it. Like, that changes the math. Like, so I don't know, man. Like, all the context comes into it. Like, it's just, and hell, same thing with MLS. Like, there's players that are here that wouldn't be getting the same money that they would be at a mid-table French team or insert any random team there. And like, they made a business decision more so than anything else to come here. So like, it goes both ways, right? Like, it's just, I gotta know, like that is such an integral part to all this. And again, this isn't like the most thoughtful thing to say, like, yeah, money's important. Like, but like, I think sometimes myself included, gets caught up of like, oh, that makes a lot of sense on paper. Or why wouldn't he do this? It's like, well, that team isn't offering him as much. It's like, oh, like, why is Kellen Acosta considering Chicago Fire? Oh, because they're desperate and they're probably going to pay him the most if he ends up going there, right? Like, so that's how these things work.
Very well said. And I get these mysterious WhatsApp from Saudi Arabia journalists, and I'm sure you're getting a bunch of those, but I'm like, no, I got nothing.
My favorite is when people ask me for phone numbers. I'm like, dude, who the fuck are you? Why are you asking me for phone number? Give me a break. Do your own job.
I had somebody asked to be picked up at the airport. I kid you not, that's on WhatsApp. Right. I'm like, no. I know. So anyway, and I didn't know which airport it was. So real driver. Yeah, Uber's great, fella. I did not correspond. But hey, is there that's true. I felt bad for a moment. I go, should I get out there? I don't know what airport it is though, or what terminal, yada yada. Is there something that kind of excited you of all the moves that you saw? I mean, I know I saw a tweet about the Rapids. I think that's really cool too, and yeah, it's good. Is there anything that tops that, you think, so far? And let me. I know I shouldn't double prong it, but what do you think the next couple of weeks are going to look? Is it going to snowball here with what we're going to hear from these players? Oh, you're nodding. Yes,
absolutely. Like, this is like, again, there's still 5 or 6 weeks until the season starts, but preseason is opening up this week, and now teams are like, now you start to get the urgency of like the we can just wait, that deal's not good enough, and then you get to preseason and the head coach comes into your office and says, we suck, we need that winger that we were talking about, I don't care how much he costs, go get him, right? Like, so I think that you're going to see more and more of that. And then in terms of other moves, like, again, I really like what Colorado's done. I like, again, it's easy to get better from when you're the worst team in the conference, but they've gotten a whole lot better this winter. And again, maybe I'll look like an idiot in 8 months, more of an idiot than usual in 8 months when they're like in 12th again. But I do think that they're going to be a playoff team this year, and barring what other teams do. Another one that I really liked was Emil Forsberg going to the Red Bulls. I still think he's got a lot left in the tank.
Yeah, I think coming in early too. Well. Coming in early, setting his intentions.
Yeah, like day one of preseason, like he's on his way literally right now. I think he just put something up like on a plane to come for day one of preseason. And this showed, like, the Red Bulls 2 years ago, they had one single player over the age of 25 start a game. It was Aaron Long, and then Aaron Long left. And like, they've gotten too far into the U23 Red Bull global model where they were only signing U23 players. Like, they brought in Corey Burke in free agency last year, and I was like, oh my God, like, they signed a player who's 29. Like, that's incredible. Like, Emil Forsberg, this isn't somebody that they're going to sell on in the future. Maybe this contract doesn't look great in 4 years, but it shows that they're okay. Like, we give a shit about winning right now. Like, we want, like, this is the only thing that matters right now in this deal is not return on investment. It's not a sell on. It's not this, whatever. It's this player is going to help this team win. And again, I think that he's going to be a really, really good fit in this league. But I think it's almost even more important to show, like, okay, for all the criticisms that have come around the Red Bulls correctly in the last few years, like, all right, like, now they're going to try to play like a big boy team again and be a priority for Red Bull Global. And we'll see how it goes.
Didn't even talk about Inter Miami, and this is going to be the must watch. By the way,
good point. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I saw Orlando. They bring in Lodeiro. They re-sign Facundo Torres. I go, Florida is going to be fun, man. Those games are going to be, because Inter are finding ways and not being discouraged by these big transfer deals. Obviously, Luis Suarez, and I think people forget Luis Suarez was lights out in Brazil.
What, like, the best forward in Brazil? Like, again, he doesn't have the same like defensive metrics as he used to, of course, because his age. But it was like he was in the 99th percentile of like goals, expected goals, goals plus assists, shot create. It was like everything that you want from a center forward. He's like off the charts in Brazil. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I think he'll be fine, and it's okay if he doesn't play 34 games. It's okay. Like he'll be playing a lot of games and he'll be scoring goals.
Yeah, he's not playing 34 games, but what exciting
and
stuff.
Champions League.
He's gonna get that's gonna be an eye opener. But look, Brazil was supposed to be an eye opener after spending so much time in Europe, and he just went right into it. So
I love Suarez.
Tom, you got me even more excited for the upcoming season. Thanks for carving out some time with me. Where do we get the YouTube show?
Just at Tom Bogert on YouTube.
At Tom Bogert to get all the latest. Start your mornings with Tom Bogert and his social, and not to mention all the young DPs that you were mentioning. It's all Micah Burton, but this is fantastic stuff. Yep. There's a lot of players to look forward to in 2024 in Major League Soccer. Tom Bogert in and out of the business end. We will be